Добрый вечер, дорогие друзья.
Good evening, dear friends. Thank you very much for joining our project Victoria. I would like to introduce our today's guest, Barry Kerzin, a physician of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, scientist. He studied philosophy in Berkeley University. He studied medicine and taught medicine, and works as a guest professor at the University of Tibetology in Varanasi, India. From 2011, he is consultant of the Institute of Max Planck Institute in Leipzig, Germany. I just want you to understand that we have a scientist and a Buddhist monk in one person. What is interesting in his activities that he practiced meditation for many years, and he was looking for the questions, is it possible by training your mind make your body more healthy? And today I want to present to our guest our audience. You can vote, you have special equipment. And now you will see the question on the screen. There will be 3 possible answers, and we'll just know what do you think about a very interesting issue, which will be very interesting for our guest to know. So please show the question on the screen. And Beryla, please don't forget to speak a little slower. Thank you. Well, we have some technical problems. Please, dear colleagues, please show us right now the question. Yes. So our question is, do the emotions affect the physical conditions of the person, physical health? Yes, no, and possibly yes. So please vote. Please start voting. Okay, we stop the vote and we can see the results on the screen. So most of the persons who decided to vote, they answered yes, the emotions affect the physical health. Only 1 person said no, and 3 said maybe. They're in doubt. So Barry, I will just leave you alone with our audience. Now, when you heard this answer, you probably already know how to speak to them, what to tell them. But leaving you here, I just would like to say that in the announcement of our lecture, we mentioned Paracelsus not without reason. Because the modern scientists think that he was the first to suppose that the emotions can cause diseases in person. And the 24th of September is the day of his death, actually. And he lived about 520 years ago. So this is the parallel that we draw between you and this medieval doctor. So please, physical health of a person in the harmony of body and mind. Please.
Well, seeing your responses, it may not be necessary for me to give my talk. Yes. So we're talking about health through balance. Balance of the body and balance of the mind. I have to turn this down. So where we're going to start is what could be the intermediary between balancing the body and the mind and good health. What could be the intermediary? So in the last few years, there's been a lot of research on the immune system. And the immune system plays a very active role in good physical health. So then the question is, does good emotional health, in other words, balancing the body and the mind, does it influence the immune system, which then increases or enhances our physical health? And the answer is probably yes. There have been lots of research on the immune system, measuring immune system markers. And it's found that positive states of mind, joy, happiness, love, compassion, patience, generosity, forgiveness, those things enhance the immune system, enhance the well-being, and enhance the physical health. Now, to you all, that probably sounds, yes, that's what I believe. Now, I'm sure there are some doctors here, but in general, if you ask a group of doctors, their response would be no. Maybe a few would say maybe. And maybe the odd one would say yes. Now, if this is true, it means that caregivers, doctors, nurses, all people working in the healthcare facilities, allopathic modern medicine, Chinese herbal medicine, Tibetan medicine, acupuncture, naturopathy, homeopathy, and other indigenous traditional medicines also must pay attention to the emotional life of the so-called patient. Very, very important. Okay. There may be another intermediary. There's a new field which is called epigenetics. Now, epigenetics has to do with the environment around the gene, around the DNA, and how it influences the DNA to become active or to become like asleep, dormant. In other words, epigenetics is all about those generally local chemical conditions that cause the DNA to turn on and make protein. Also, to turn off and shut down the factories. Okay? Now, traditionally, the factors in epigenetics that do this, that turn on the DNA to make protein and turn it off, have been pH, pressure, heat, maybe different electrolyte concentrations. These are very micro-physical phenomena. Recently, there has been some very exciting research out of the University of Wisconsin at Madison, showing that meditation, which is just training the mind, nothing mystical, nothing religious, just training the mind, like an athlete trains his or her body. Okay? Training the mind influences the turning on and turning off of DNA to make protein. And it influences it in a positive way. And very likely, though we don't know yet, it will make protein to boost, enhance, strengthen our immune systems. Now, some of us say, of course. We've known this for a long time. But science doesn't believe this in general. But science, as you know, is very dynamic. It's changing constantly. And now, more and more young scientists have an interest in training their minds. So actually, it's a changing field. About 5 or 6 years ago, there was this group at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and they were doing research on long-term meditators, people that had meditated minimum 10,000 hours, and many 50 or 60,000 hours of experience. And they found some amazing things. And their results have been published in the most prestigious English language scientific journals. Science, Nature, PNAS, which is the Proceedings of the Natural, PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in the United States. And what they found, you'll see on some of the some of the slides, after the photos are finished, you'll see a set of slides about the science that I'm talking about. So what I'm going to mention now, in a few minutes, you'll see on the screens. They found that by measuring the electrical impulses in the cortex of the brain by electroencephalography, EEG, that long-term meditators, when they were meditating, had these bursts of what are called gamma waves. Gamma waves are high amplitude, high frequency. What does that mean? It means on the EEG graph, I have a delay in my headset. Normally on an EEG, you see something like this, just a normal pattern. During meditation, with the meditators only, you got these bursts of something that looks like this. Big high waves, very short, coming almost on top of each other, lasting for sometimes seconds or longer. And this happened in many parts of the cortex, front, back, right, left. And the interpretation is synchronicity, harmony, well-being, and communication. Prior to this research, brain scientists thought that only areas of the cortex that were maybe millimeters away or closer could have communication. This research on long-term meditators while they're meditating suggests that in fact there's this harmony happening across the whole cortex. And if you ask the meditator, what is he or she experiencing during meditation, they say joy, often love, compassion, and often harmony, a sense of synchronicity. So this is very interesting research. They also looked at the structure of the brain, and they looked at the structure through a magnetic resonance, so-called functional MRI. Okay? These are kind of scans where there's a big donut, you lie flat on a cold metal table, they strap you in so you can't move at all, they give you a microphone, and they put you in the middle of this huge donut. Some of you have had this kind of test, or you've seen it on TV or somewhere. Normally, you're inside of this machine for a few minutes, and then the study is finished. If you're somebody who has some kind of a medical problem and you get this test. For us, we had to stay sometimes 2 hours. If you have claustrophobia, doesn't work. And they would ask us to meditate and then stop, usually for anywhere from 3, 5, or 10 minutes, then a period of no meditation, and again meditate. And they give us 3 types of meditation. Sometimes they asked us to meditate what we call single-pointed, a concentration kind of meditation, where you try to make your mind stable and clear, like a laser. And sometimes they said, meditate on open awareness, which means that you're completely wide open. Your mind, your heart, your eyes, your ears, all your senses, completely wide open, but you're not concentrating on any one particular thing, so-called non-referential, just a wide open presence in the present without thought. And thirdly, the same as the second meditation, but adding compassion. Now, on the MRI, what they found was the area of the brain in the front, so behind your forehead, called the prefrontal cortex, was bigger, more developed anatomically compared to non-meditators. So what? It turns out that this area, the prefrontal cortex, regulates executive function. What's executive function? Okay? It has to do with decision making, good decision making. It has to do with having a broad perspective, maintaining calmness, at the same time alertness. It has to do with memory, particularly short-term memory that we need for making good decisions. It also has to do with emotional regulation. So these these functions happen in this prefrontal cortex, more highly developed in long-term meditators than other people. Okay, I don't know who this is. I didn't put that slide in. So this is the Electroencephalograph. This one has 56 leads or electrodes, and it's measuring those gamma waves which you see here. Okay? Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the role of positive emotions in healing. About 25 years ago, there began some ongoing research on women with breast cancer. And the women were divided into two groups. Both groups, that is, all women in the study, got the appropriate treatment for their breast cancer. Surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, one or a combination, whichever their doctors decided was the best for their type of breast cancer and their stage, that is how far advanced. Now, the difference in these two groups is that one group met with psychologists regularly, and the psychologists flooded them with love. The other group didn't get this, at least not formally as part of the study. And it turns out, and this research has been done many times now, it's now mainstream accepted in medicine. And they found what you might expect, that on life satisfaction measures, are you satisfied, happy with your life? On those kind of questions, the women that received the love scored higher. We would expect that, okay? But they also lived longer. So love helps us feel better and live longer, at least in this situation with women with breast cancer. Now, there's a kind of psychological syndrome that we talk about in cardiology. And in America and Europe, we call it type A personality. this is someone that's really driven, angry a lot of the time. It turns out that these kind of people have more heart attacks, and they die earlier compared to others. So here are two examples of positive emotions enhancing our physical health, even longevity. Okay. I'll have a sip of water. Now, I'm a doctor, you've heard that, but I'm also a Buddhist monk. So, kind of what's the view from someone that has this kind of dual background? Is a lot of this science that I've been talking about, is it compatible with being a religious person? Usually, if we look at the history of religion and particular religious institutions and science, usually we find battles. Yeah? They're not usually talking to each other, and they're not usually very compatible. So what's this seemingly religious man who's also a scientist, a medical scientist? How can he kind of bridge the gap? Okay? Well, I wasn't born Buddhist. Okay? When I was in my early teens, two books somehow came to me. I don't know from where. Nobody around me was interested in Buddhism. And these were Zen Buddhist books. And I read them. They were about the mind and about this Buddhist philosophy of shunyata.